So Angular is being maintained by the Google team. They're the one.
Okay.
They're the one who came up with the Angular framework, and they're the one who are doing the development as well as the maintenance. Formerly, it was known as AngularJS, but then after developing the second version, they said that they can just name it Angular. It is modular in nature, in the sense that when you come from React, you can basically know Angular because they're both structured the same way. So
Mhm.
today we're just going to do Angular installation, create our first application, and then call it a day. No big deal, no big issue. So the main building block of Angular, for you to understand how to build applications using Angular, then there are certain important concepts that you need to know. The first one is
Mhm.
the Angular CLI. CLI stands for Angular Command Line Interface. So it is the one that we're going to use to create our application, create our components, create our services, our directives, our models, and also our injection dependency injections. So the moment you understand how the CLI works, then you are better. I think you can basically maneuver through the Angular framework. Then we also be working with models. We're working with components, templates, metadata, data binding, directive services, and dependency injections. Once you've understood, there are around seven. Once you have an in-depth understanding of the seven components, then you can build any application you want using Angular. So let's talk about Angular installation. For you to start working with Angular, you must have Node installed in your application, because Angular uses TypeScript. TypeScript is the superset of JavaScript, which means that every JavaScript code is a TypeScript, but not every TypeScript code is a JavaScript. So we're going
Mhm.
to start by installing our Node.js. At the same time, we must also install the npm. Npm stands for our Node package manager, exactly. So for you to install your npm, we just sudo apt install npm, and I hope you have it installed in your laptop cell.
Mhm.
Exactly, and you also have Node installed in your application. So
Yeah.
sure. So once you have the Node installed in your application, and also you have got npm installed in your application, then we can go ahead and install our Angular CLI. You just go to your command line, and then you npm install. Alafu, if you write G, it means that you're installing it globally in your computer, which means you can access it at any point in your computer, either at the desktop or within other folders, or even at the root. And then once you have installed your Angular CLI, we can then move ahead and create our first application. So I will come to my command line, and I will cd. Let me just cd to fine. Then I'll cd to my desktop, and from there, we look at the installation that we have talked about. So I'm using the Node version. Okay. How do you check the Node installation?
You had already installed.
Yes, of course, I have it installed already.
Oh, okay.
It's throwing for me errors here. Okay, sure. I have Node 16.18.1 installed. So that's the one I'm currently using. If you have installed the current Node version, it will tell you like Angular is not supporting Node version 20, because currently we have Node version 20 that is it's not actually stable. So if you install it, Angular will tell you that it's not actually supporting Node version 20. So you'll do well to degrade your Node version to either Node 14, 15, 16, 17. I think around 17 will be okay. So
Oh, okay.
once you have a node installed which is less than version 20, then of course you can as well check on your npm version. Okay, so I also have our npm version. So once you have installed your Angular CLI, I'll give you the command in the, okay, I'll show you how to get the command. Oh, and then you can check your the Angular version that you have installed. So always when you're talking about Angular CLI, we always give the command ng. So ng will help us with a lot of generation, whether you're checking the version, whether you are coming up with new components, whether you're coming up with new services, or whichever generation you have to make in Angular. So most of the time we'll just be using ng. So we'll go with ng version. There we go. And then I have got Angular 16 installed. So I'm using Angular 16. I'm using the Node 16, and I'm also using npm not package manager 8.1.12. So the current Angular version that we have is Angular 16, and that's the one that we'll be using during our development, just to make our work a little bit simpler. So once we have all the installation that we need, because these are the three installations that we'll be needing, you'll be needing Node, npm, and Angular CLI. So once you have the three of them, then you will be ready to create your first Angular application. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. So for you to create your Angular application, we are going to use the ng command. So we are going to just write ng new, then the application name that we want to create. So it is just as simple. There is no miracle. So we can just go ahead and create our application. So from here, I created a folder that we are going to use for today. So I can just navigate to that folder. It's called learning. So we can cd to learning. cd to learning. Okay. For you to create the new Angular application, so we are going to do ng, then new, then our Angular application, we will call it let's call it goal. So and then we just enter and we leave it to install. Then we'll be needing routing. So we'll be using our normal CSS. You can use SAS, you can use SCSS, and then you can use CSS. So the one that you're comfortable with. For now, let's just use CSS for the time being, because when you use SCSS, you'll be having two CSS files. So for every time you run your SCSS, it will generate a CSS file. So for the time being, let's just use CSS to ensure that our development process is a little bit simpler for the beginning. So you just enter OK, and then npm will do its own stuff. It takes some time for you to do the installation. So there's one that I created already. We can just go ahead and use it, and then by the time you're done, we'll come again to see whether whatever we are having here is what we're working with. So I can just have another one here, and then from there we can just, okay, let's go with the one for the games. So we'll cd to games, and then we'll just open it in our VS Code. There we go. Exactly. So when you're coming from the React framework and then you come to Angular, everything, okay, it will be a very, very familiar landscape. If you look at your program, you'll have your VS Code, your Node, just excuse, you'll have the Node modules, and then you'll have the source. Under source, you'll be having your application. This is where we'll be writing our code. It is the kitchen where everything will be made, and then the assets. This is where we'll be having our our images and any other thing that we'll be using that is not part of the logic. So for this application, I've been able to put there at least 3 images that we'll be using, because I thought like before the end of today we can be able to at least know how we can use Bootstrap in our Angular. So I did use these images just for the sake of having Bootstrap installed in our Angular, and then we can go through our the, the tree and then look at what is more important in this framework, the way it is. So let's look at the JSON file, package the JSON. So this is where all the dependency will be. So when you want to do our installation, let's say we want to install Bootstrap, so you'll just come here and look whether your Bootstrap is installed. When you want to install other libraries or other dependencies, you'll just go to your JSON.file. So there are two parts. We have the one for the dependency, and then we have the one for the dev dependencies. The one for the dev dependencies, this one is just for development. So every other thing that we'll be using for our development, like for instance, when you come here, you'll be seeing Angular CLI. But then when you come here, there's no Angular CLI, just because we'll be using our Angular CLI for our development purposes. But then when you want to publish our application or for production, there'll be no need for using Angular CLI. So under the dependency here, we'll be having everything that we'll be using for our development purposes. But then when you come to the for production, and then here for the development purposes. And then when you come here, you'll be giving some script. Remember, we said that we will be using ng most of the time for our generation. When you want to generate your components, your services, your directives, you'll be using ng. So when you want to render your application to the web server, under development, you'll be doing ng-serve just to see whether whatever you're developing. When you want to build your application, once you're done for production, you'll be using ng build. When you're writing your test, because Angular presumes that you'll be doing the unit testing. Remember unit testing that we used to do kitambo, eh? Yeah, so Angular presumes that for every test that you'll be writing, for every logic you'll be writing, you'll accompany it with some testing, eh? So when you want to run your test to see whether they are actually working or not, you'll be using ng test for the same purpose. So that is the JSON file. And then the README is also important, okay, for the beginning, because it's a documentation of how Angular works. So when you come here, you'll be told how to get started with the Angular. So for instance, when you want to run when you want to render your application to the web server, when you're developing, you'll do ng-serve, alafu you'll navigate to the localhost 400 for you to see your application. And then when you want to generate your component, you have here ng generate component, then you go to component name. The same will apply when you want to generate directives, pipes, services, classes, guards, interface, enumerator, and modules. So it's the same thing. Once you have understood that whenever I want to generate something, I'm going to use ng, then generate. Then when it is service, just go with service. Component, you go with component, depending on whatever you want to generate. And then for building purposes, we'll do ng building, and then for testing, ng test. So it's just a repetition of how Angular works. The documentation of Angular is repeated almost everywhere in Angular, just to help you get started with Angular. So that will do for the README and for the JSON. Those are the most important files under this section. So when you come to the style.css, this is where, okay, we call it the global style, the style that will apply to all part of your application can be put here. So let's say you want to use typography. Let's say you want to use monospace. Let's say you want to use any other typography, and you want it to be consistent throughout your application. Then you'll do well just to put it here. And then when you come to the main TS, JavaScript, okay, Angular uses TypeScript. That's where you will see main TS instead of seeing JS. But then TypeScript and JavaScript as one and the same. Any JavaScript code is a valid TypeScript code. So once you know how to write JavaScript code, then there's no issue. As in, moving from JavaScript to TypeScript is just one step, so that won't pose any problem. So this is where it is the entry point when you're dealing with our JavaScript, or you can as well say when you're dealing with our TypeScript. And then the HTML, this is the entry point with our HTML files. So we are going to do the rendering. So when you are doing the rendering, all the rendering will be done from the root app.js. So if in case you want to do this thing called nesting, So most of the time we'll be nesting our components, but then all those components are nested under the uproot component. So you'll have all the components nested within each other component, then all of them are nested within the uproot component, so that your entire application, the first page that you'll be seeing is the one for the app component, and it's just a cascading of nested components as you go along the way. So there's not so much here. The only thing you need to know is that this is the entry point of your application when it comes to the HTMLs. So with that, we say that our asset will just contain our images and any other thing that we want to use. Maybe if in case you want to have our icons, they'll just be here in our assets. And then when you come to our application, the app, this is the upload model. So remember, we say that they are the essential part. We can come back here to our so we did say that they are the main building blocks of Angular. So the models are very, very important. Our components are important. Our templates are important. We have the metadata, we have data binding, directive services, and also dependency injection. So when you come to the app.model, we have here the ng model. The ng model is where we can say it is an interface. It's an interface where all the components will be, where we'll have all the components. So if in case you create another component, under the declaration, that component will be added here to the app component. And then the components also have got their directive which they're using. So all the directive that a component will be needing during the life cycle, they'll be here in the import. So let's say the app component, like in this case, the app component will need browser model, and also it will need the app routing model. That's why we only have got one component right now, and that's the app component. And our component, for our app component to function effectively, we'll be needing two important models. So we'll be needing the browser model and also the app routing model. So let's say we again put another component, and that other component needs other models. So we'll be having two components, and the other model that component will be needing will also be added here in the imports. So the ng model is important when you're dealing with components, because all the components that are there in your application will be here in the ng model. Let's say you decide to remove our app component here. If you remove our app component here, you'll be running into an error. And again, if you decide to remove either the browser model or the app routing model, you'll also be running into problems. So the app component, the ng model, is important, especially when you're dealing with the normal components. Just a minute. It's still around.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, thank you so much. I thought you're gone altogether.
No, I'm listening.
It's okay. So every component that you'll be creating will be declared here in the declaration, and then whichever model they'll be using will be here in the import. So that is with our components. And again, if you look at these are three modules. We have here app components.ts, app component spec.ts, and then we have got app component.css. So every component, once you generate a component, it will come with 4 files. So the first file will be the CSS file. We have the HTML file. We have the spec.ts file, and we have got the app component.ts file. So in the CSS file, this is where we'll be writing all our CSS codes, just that way. And then under the HTML file, this is where we'll be writing all our HTMLs. So if you look at this HTML file, it has got a lot of boiler codes. And once we have rendered our application, then you will see just in a nutshell. So this is where we'll be having all our HTML code. All the HTML code will be rendered in our HTML. And then under the spec.ts, this is where we'll be writing all our unit codes. So if in case you'd want to do some testing before you render your application, all the unit tests will be rendered here in the app spec.ts, and then all our logic will be rendered here in the app.ts. So whenever you do a generation of a component, you'll be given 4 files. The first one will be the TS. We have with the spec.ts, the HTML, and the CSS, and all of them, they work together in conjunction. So we'll go ahead and then render our application and see how it looks like before we can write our first hello world. We always write hello world everywhere just to ensure that we know how to program. It's important.
That is standard.
Yeah, it's important. Just for consolation, yeah, in case your app refused to work completely.
At least you had hello world.
Yeah, at least you had hello world. So for us to render our application, we said that we're going to do ng serve, and then when you want, if you want it to open your browser as it is rendering, we'll just do hyphen open, but then you can just do short. You can write a short word, just O, to stand for open, and you'll just do the same thing. So when we enter, we expect it to, okay, let's do yes. Okay. Okay, so once we have our application, this is how it will look like. The first time you render your application, you'll be brought to this page. So this page is very important as well. I told you that Angular documentation is everywhere. So you can even come here and then you will be able to start off with Angular. Like in this case, they're telling you for you to generate a component, we are going to just do ng generate component, then the name of the component xyz. Again, if you want to start with Angular CLI, let's say you want to do the installation, you can as well just come here, and then it will take you through how to do the installation. So it will come here, and then it will tell you how to get started. We'll be having our npm, then install Angular CLI. Then from there, if in case you want to know the commands that you can use with Angular CLI, you will come to Angular, then help. It will tell you all the options that you have here when using Angular CLI. At the same time, when you want to know the help that you can get when you're creating a new application, you just go to Angular new, then you look for help. And when you want to create your application, you will go to Angular new, then the name of your first application, then you will cd to the application, then you ng stuff, so that you can get where we are at the moment. And again, it will tell you that you go to your browser at this local host, and then you will see your new application. So the first part of the application is important because it also helps you to get started with the Angular. And when you come here to learning Angular, it will tell you the most fundamental parts of Angular, the one that you basically need to know. So like we had highlighted before, if you come here, you see we are having the directives, we have the components, we have data binding, we have our pipes, we have services, and then we have routing. So everywhere Angular, you look at any part of Angular, just see documentation here, documentation here. They just want to help you to get started with Angular. That's the point. So once you have understood the key components that we need to understand, that is the model, the CLI, components, template, metadata, data binding, directive, services, and dependency injection, then we will be more than good to go. So so far we have installed our Angular, we have created our first Angular app, we have done the installation, and then we are in our new application. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to create our components. There are two main components in Angular. There is the normal components that we have that we have at the moment. So let's just create a new component, and then we'll see the way to create the two components, because it's important. If in case uh, you want to streamline your coding process, and you want to go with the model, the React model, then you will using the standalone components. But then if you want to be the if you are conservative, if you know Angular and you don't want to change to the new standalone model, then you can just do the normal way. So if you want to create the normal component in Angular, you'll just come and ng g for generate. So you can write generate, or you can just write g, both will work. Alafu component, you can write component, or you can just come and write c, that will work. Then we will come and say our first component of goals, let's say coding. So our first goal is coding, and that will be our component, and then we just enter. So with that, our component is created. So when you come here to coding, you'll see that our components are got the four parts I told you before. So we have the components.ts, that's where we will be writing all our logics, and then we have the .spec.ts, this is where we'll be writing all our unit testing. Then we have got the HTML, this is where we'll be writing all our HTML codes, and then we have our components.css, this is where we'll be writing our component.css. And again, I told you about the ng model. So when you come here, you'll see that our coding components have been added to our declaration, but under our inputs, nothing has been added. It's because both the app component and the coding component share the same models. So both of them are using the browser model, which means if you go to the browser, you can be able to access them. At the same time, both of them are using our routing model, which means you can be able to maneuver from one component to the other component. But if in case we add another model to either of them, then that model will be here in our imports. So if in case you're creating the normal component, then it will always be this way. All your components will always be here in our declaration, under the declaration, and all the models that they're using will always be here under the imports. So let us render our first hello world. So we'll come here to our specs, then we will delete everything that is here, and then we will say let's do p, okay, and let's just say hello world, and there we go. So when you come here, Angular CLI always listen to the changes that we make. So every time you do, that's why you see we have compiled and then another compile. So every time you save, it again compiles, just the same way the one for React basically works. So when you come from the background of React, then you come to Angular, you're always home. Like there's no disparity, you're just home completely. So when you come to your Angular, let's see. Today my laptop is a little bit loady, taking forever. It has not compiled. So let's do this. Let me just restart this code. Just wait, today my application is loading too much. I don't know why, but it's okay, it's fine. So let's just do code. There we go. Okay, there we have it. Let's try again and see whether we'll notice those changes. So when you come here, we'll just empty, then we'll serve, then do open. Okay. And there we go. So here we have our hello world. And if in case you want it to be a little bit bolder, you can just come here and you can use H4 or even H1. You just say hello world. It will still work. Sure. So when you come here, you see now we have our hello world. So that's how we render our applications. We just use our HTML to render whatever we want to render to the web browser. But then if in case now we want to we want to render a component is another component, nesting of components. If we want to nest one component in another component, we'll come here to our component here, and then let's say we want to render this component inside this other component. So let's come here and say HR. We just what we'll be doing will just be noting. Okay, so let's come here to our app.ts. There's something called here selector. So every time you want to render an application in another application, you're using the selector. The selector will be telling the other component that which component are we actually talking about. So every selector is unique in nature. So like in this case, we have our app coding, and then in this case we have our app the app root. So the app root is there. Okay, if you come to the index.ts, we have the app root, and then when you come to our app.ts, we have our app root. It means that it is the main entry point for our application, but then we can render other application inside this particular application. So if you want to render our coding application in the app application, we come to our HTML, and then we just do the selector. So once we have our selector, it means that everything that is in our coding component will be rendered in our app component. And again, if you come to, let's just do the saving. So if you come here, you'll see that we have it here, coding works, and coding is the one that we have for our coding coding component. So that is how you can basically create your normal component. Again, we can also create the standalone components. So when you want to stand, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Just a bit of a concern.
Yes.
We are moving. I think you've covered quite a bit, and Nani hasn't come yet.
No, it told me is coming from church. They told me that he may not even attend, so it just told me we just continue. If in case he makes it, it's okay. If he doesn't, then we just meet next time. So that's why I told you we just continue. And if he joins, that will be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's okay, so we can continue. Okay, thank you. So let's come to the app component. So like I was saying, we are going to use the selector for our we call them nesting. So when you want to nest a component inside another component, all you do you just call the selector. and the selector will take all those components, all the part of the component, then render them in the other component, just like you have done. Okay, so we are talking about the other component. So the other component is called a standalone component. It is essentially different. It's very much different from the normal component that you have created. So let's try creating that component. So we'll come to our games, and then we'll move to our source, and then let's move to our app. Okay, so once we get to our app, we'll create another folder. Let's call it the other one was coding, so second one, let's say design. We want to do another goal for design, so we'll move to design. Then from here we're going to create the next component. So the next component is the standalone component, and then I'll show you the difference between the normal component and the standalone component, and where you really want to use them. Basically, you can build an application only on standalone components. At the same time, you can do a mixture of standalone components and also add the normal component, and you can also just do the normal components without considering the standalone components. So when you want to create your standalone components, you'll just come and then you generate component, and then we'll call them design, and then you'll give it a keyword called standalone, so double hyphen, then standalone. And there we have it. So we have our we have our design. So let's come here to app. You're saying something?
Yes, I want to ask a question. So
Yes.
you said, just kindly repeat the difference between a standalone component and the other one.
Okay, the difference is that when you are doing the normal component, you'll just come, and then the command is ng generate component and the name of the component. Let's say coding. So that
without the standalone, adding the dash standalone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's
But ideally, what's the difference between the standalone and the one that is done without the standalone?
so once.
Like technically, kuna kitu technically different between the two.
Yeah. There's a difference between the standalone component and the normal component.
Which
There's a problem with my laptop. You see, it's not showing there. It's not there. See, I'll show you the difference. I'm trying to access the design, but it's not there. So today we are going to have so many problems, but there's no, don't worry. I will just restart it again.
Okay.
So there we go. We'll do the code. Okay. So here we have it. We have the design, and then again we have the four elements. So when you come to our design.component.ts, this is where the difference is. So remember, when we were discussing about the normal component, we said that our normal component must be declared in our app model. So that when you come here to the app model, we have our coding component, that's the normal component. But then when you come to standalone component, it cannot be declared in the ng model, because we want to limit the way we are writing our codes, so that every time you have your component, you don't have to come to the ng model to declare it there. You can just use it independently without attaching it to the ng model. So that's the first difference. The difference is that for every standalone component, you don't have to declare it in your ng model. So they will never.
But it works the same. It works the same as the other one.
It works the same as the other one, but it is much independent compared to the other two.
But would you then say that you would rather just use independent components than your standalone components rather?
Exactly. You would, because it will really help you with your coding. You'll be writing less codes. They'll be more independent. So the moment you understand the concept of standalone components, you can build entire application using standalone components. You remember how you were using it in a Java in a React. So it's just the same way in React. So in React, every component is just standalone. They operate independently. They want them to operate. So if in case you want to build an application that follows the concept of React, then if you're using Angular, then you would go with standalone components as opposed to the normal components, because the normal components, there's just a way that they're so much attached to other part of the code. Are we together?
Yes, we are.
It's okay. So the first difference is that when you come to your ng model, our standalone components cannot be they cannot be in the declaration. At the same time, they won't be in the imports. And when you come to the normal component, you will see here under the component we only have selector, we have the template URL, and then we have our style.urls. But then when you come to your independent component or the standalone component, now you see that we have got the keyword standalone and it's labeled true, and then all our imports will be having our imports done in the component. Okay, so still you'll be having your imports. The model that we'll be using will be declared your import. The only difference is that all the imports will be done within that component. So that component is standalone, like it won't be needing to import maybe other models from other parts of your code, so that it can run. It will be doing everything on its own account. It will just be, it's independent in a way, yeah. So that's the main difference. So if in case you're using the standalone component, you'll be writing fewer codes and you'll be having a lot of flexibility. And if in case you have got an error, you'll just go to that specific component and then you sort out the error and it'll be done. So when you're doing your development, there's no harm in combining both of them as you see fit, and there's no harm in using standalone components as you see fit. At the same time, there's no harm in just using the normal components as you see fit. So that will be so much dependent.
Okay.
It's okay. If I go off, just call me. I'm saying like my network is somehow misbehaving here.
Okay.
It's okay. So let's continue with our. We are following something here. So let's talk about binding. Binding syntax is like, now we have got our TS file, which is our JavaScript file, but then we want to have everything that is in our JavaScript file, and we want to put them into our HTML file. How do we get our logic into the CSS file? Like, because we okay, if you come to our application, every logic will be written here in our app.ts, but then they'll be displayed here in our HTML file. So the question is, how do you get your logic to the CSS to our HTML file? So that's where that's where our binding syntax will come into place. So there are 4 ways that we can use to do our binding. We can use interpolation, we can use property binding, and then we can use event binding. So event binding will always deal with when you want to listen to an event. Let's say you want to click a button to change maybe color, you want to click a button to toggle maybe between if in case you have got, let's say, a number and you have got a small screen, and then you want to toggle to see other links. So in that case, we'll be using our event binding. And then interpolation is when you just want to see the normal data, the static data, or the one that you have rendered from maybe an API. So let's just come here and see how we can do that. So let's say under our component, the one for the design, we want a title for our.
Hello.
Yes.
Please give me 2 minutes. I'm trying. My laptop is going off na imekata kucharge. Just give me a minute. I figure out why kabla iende off.
Okay, let me know once you are you're set.
Sawa.
It's okay.
it's not charging. Oh my God. Hello.
Bado imekataa?
Imekubali finally. I almost
Oh.
started crying.
After worry.
Okay.
So
You can continue now.
oh, okay, there's no problem. So what you're going to do right now is um, we call it interpolation or binding by syntax binding by interpolation. Okay. So let's say we want to declare a name for our design. So we can just come here and say title, and then we just give it a string and call it design component. And let's say we want to render this. We want to render our design component in our HTML. When you come to when you okay, we need to start our server. So let's come here and we start the server. Okay, it's still running. We can just kill it from here, kill this guy, and then we ng serve open. Okay, so if you come to your code here, you see that we don't have the title, so the title is not there, which means whatever code we have written in our the logic that we have written in our app.ts cannot be viewed in our application. But then our desire is everything that we have written here in our app.ts must be viewed in our browser or in our HTML. So for us to ensure that whatever we have written here is rendered in our application, then we can now use the interpolation. So when you come to our app.ts, for us to do the interpolation, we can do it within HTML tags. So let's say within API, or we can just do it randomly without even using our HTML tag. So we can just come here and then do they need to be double. So curly braces, then another curly braces, then we just come here and write title, and that will work. So when we save and then we come under today my laptop is just as sick as it can get. It's not compiling.
You have to kill the server, kill the terminal, and then in again.
It has to be that way. Maybe we are starting on a very long note. Maybe Angular is hard. Nobody knows. Tunaweza kuja tujichoche then nasema oh my if only we knew what we are playing with. We are playing with fire. But then you won't be intimidated. How can we get intimidated by Angular? It won't happen. There we go. Okay. So our title is not rendering. It is what you're getting again.
Umerestart na bado haifanyi.
Imagine.
Try removing the spaces kando ya hiyo title.
Unaona, the thing is, every time you hit save, you need to recompile because Angular listens every time you make changes, it compiles again.
Oh, okay.
But the CLI is not picking, so that's where the issue is. It's not compiling. So when it's not compiling, you just have the same screen always. Today must be very hectic, but we'll manage.
Bado haifanyi.
Still loading. I don't know why my laptop today is very slow.
Kikata, you can try that space thing. It just might be it. But I don't remember much from Angular anyway.
Okay, one thing that I believe in, once we are able to build our first application in Angular, it won't be an issue. So far with your design, kuna penye umefika?
No.
Don't worry. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. The only thing that I need, you see, for me, by the end of this week, I'll be done with my first design. It will be complete. Itakuwa complete kabisa. And then, since I'm still free, I will help you guys tuimalize rakaraka. Then kama mna design nitaweka design ingine, mnisaidie tena. Kama mna nitaweka ingine.
Pressure, tupe pressure kabisa.
Why not? Like seriously, I have got today I was thinking about another application. It's a very cool one. Though it's a cool application, but the name is just Ogwash, but it's a very cool application. So don't
What's
worry.
the name?
Don't worry. Once I have the design, I'll let you know. Unaweza toka meeting kama umekasirika.
Hapana, siseme.
No, sitaki kukasirisha. It's very early. It's very early in the day. Let me hold my horses. It's okay. So let's see what actually happens. Let's ng. Let me serve. I intended to finish mapema. I don't know why this laptop is restraining me from doing so. Let's hope this time round it works. Okay. There we go. Coding works.
Imeonyesha title?
Yeah.
Imeonyesha title?
Is it the problem?
Nauliza, has it shown the title?
It has not shown the title and it's not compiling.
Can you please remove the space for me just to remove that idea in my head? Because it's that idea is like just...
Oh, the space here?
Yeah. I don't know why it's stuck with me.
Okay. You see, once you save, it adds automatically peke yake.
Haya basi. No comment.
I won't talk.
Usiongee, tuachie Mungu.
Yale itabidi.
Na nimeinsist, yani Mungu anisaidie tu.
Let's again say ng serve open. This laptop has been working fine throughout the day. Tangu niamka haijanisumbua. Alafu saizi saa inaanza kusumbuana. I don't know why.
Ghost whisperer. Ghost whisperer. Someone is whispering into your laptop's ears.
Nika amekata kushindwa leo. Na sometimes unasema shindwe leo unasema shindwe, nasema ni shindwe aje. Wala is not working. Oh, ifanye hivi See, you just give me like 3 minutes. Usitoke kwa meeting. Ni restart ile alafu ni kujoin. Tumalize na hii kitu.
Okay. Okay.
It's okay. Let's save